3/4 of our budget are people. And that's reflected in the compensation and the employee benefits that you see here. The majority of our staff members have negotiated agreements in place for fiscal year 2012. I project in the aggregate those agreements looking at a 3.5% increase in compensation. Employee benefits includes health benefits, it also includes payroll tax, FICA, it also includes pension payments, workers' comp, unemployment insurance, but the lion's share of it is health insurance. The health insurance program that we have in place for the majority of our staff members has seen increases over the last 2 years pushing 20%. I have 12.5% here because the 10-11 number, the 33 million, has an anomaly in it, and that is the unemployment cost because of the 150 people that we needed to cut out of the budget. So we had a spike in unemployment. So taking that into account, it's not aggressive, it's not conservative, it's somewhere in the middle for this projection. Special ed tuition is typically what we see is about a 5% increase in the cost of that. And the others, let's assume they're flat. Let's assume they're flat for now. So that's an $8 million increase. $2 million shortfall in revenue, $8 million increase in appropriations. We're looking at a $10 million problem for 2011, 2012 that we need to start to address. So that's the budget evolution. That's where we're going. Mr. Plestel?
Could you back up for a second? Just look at the special ed projection of 15 million. It'd be interesting, I think, to do a study to determine if we were going to basically house and run a special ed, given the size of our district. We're laying out $15 million. It's hard to imagine that we couldn't put a comprehensive program together in one of our facilities for $10 million and charge other districts to come in and use it rather than spend $15 million. Just seems like something we should look at. Well, in terms of where we're spending our money.
Absolutely.
As a revenue source for the district, because we have all these resources, we've got the facilities, we have an enrollment that's down, and it seems to me that that might be a place where we can really do something positive. And both for those kids, because they could stay local,
certainly,
and for the district.
It's restricted environment, and it's something that Dr. Kegler and Dr. Hazel have talked a lot about, and I know Mrs. Durbig is in the audience, and we have a fairly comprehensive autistic program at Howell High School right now, which Dr. Emmerman put in place, and we have some other in-district components, and I think that idea is something that should be certainly pursued, along with many other ideas, aggressively.
But maybe a state-of-the-art facility, not a second, a state-of-the-art facility that we...
And is there an opportunity to receive students from other districts and charge tuition? And those are all ideas that are very much in play.
There is a model out there on a smaller scale in Freehold Township schools. If you remember the strategic financial plan we put together, we're on the same team.
Yep.
They initiated that about 3 years ago, and it's growing, and it's working very well.
Yes.
But it's a smaller scale.
Right. What happened there was we got a private school for the handicapped to actually have a satellite campus in our district. And although there was not a lot of savings in the area of tuition, there was in the area of transportation. The other really good part about it was a training grounds for our teachers to come in and look at, preschool handicap programs. How does Douglas do it? Do they do it very well? And we would have access to that expertise right on site. And the idea was to grow it so that into the other schools, depending on space. And that's something that they've done.
What's your suggestion? Some kind of study commission? What would be the the next step to look hard at something like that?
I think the next step would be for me to sit down with Dr. Hazel and Dr. Kegler and come up with a formal plan of action to present to the board and get your approval to move forward the next time we get together.
All right, well, I'll make that motion.
Okay. All right, so
The second.
at this point in the presentation, the first section, what I wanted to accomplish was to highlight that there is a situation that we're going to need to address. It's a serious situation with regard to our future budget. The other important thing is that this is representative of a structural deficit. In other words, once we get through this, just as we got through the 20 million last year, we're back again. And when we look at our budget development, and there are really three different approaches to it, you can do things differently, do the same thing differently, you can defer it, or you can simply not do it at all. Those are essentially the three options. The deferring it will catch up to you, and to do things differently, that's the only one that's really the sustainable option going forward. Not doing it at all, that's easy. You just cut it and not do it anymore. But it's not a perpetual sustainable solution. As in our thinking, the administration's thinking, and as our discussion happens here with the board and with the public, the way I view this is there's really two equally important perspectives on any decisions that we're going to make in the budget. The one, on one side, there's an objective data analysis, factual knowledge base that I think we all need to sit down and look at and understand what that is. The second is a more subjective component, where we look at what are the values, what are the beliefs and the opinions of all of the stakeholders in our community. And the two of those together, against the backdrop of impact on student achievement, will ultimately be how we make decisions. So that's how we're approaching that as we look at each portion of our operation. Actionable areas. Our overview of this and how we're going to proceed is we've broken it down really into three areas: revenue, staffing, and programs and services. On the revenue side, we're going to be presenting data and having input from all stakeholder groups on pay to participate, what models work, what don't. Many districts have gone to this in recent years. Many last year went to this. We stopped short of going to this, but it certainly is going to be something that I think is going to be part of a budget package that we need to put together for fiscal year 2012. Commercialism, Mr. Quirk has been putting together information to share with the board on what opportunities exist here. In the area of staffing, we need to look at our organizational structure and what alternative staffing options are available to the district. Also, to look at our negotiated agreements, our bargaining agreements, understand what limitations they present and what opportunities they present. And finally, in the area of programs and services, to really investigate and evaluate the programs and the services as far as how are they being successful, how are they being utilized. And for those underperforming or underutilized programs and services, we need to either refine them or eliminate them so that we get the most return on our investment. And finally, the long-term planning, the infrastructure component. Just a word about infrastructure, and this is where I'm going to spend most of my time. This district has, for many years, taken the approach that they were going to commit a certain financial level of effort towards their facilities. And that happened in the annual budget. So $1 million, plus or minus, depending on the year, put towards replacing this section of roof, or this boiler, or this bank of windows, renovating 5 classrooms per building. And as a result, we have outstanding facilities. One of the things that was eliminated in the 10-11 budget was that annual level of effort for our facilities. And there is no reason to believe that this prudent practice is going to be viable as we look at 2012 and beyond. So we need to find a different way to address our facility needs. One of those ways is a referendum. With the referendum, what happens in some school districts, quite honestly, is these are the types of things that are first to get cut. And the buildings fall into a state of need. So you'll see referendums coming up in districts periodically. We have not had a referendum in Freehold Regional in 10 years, and that was to put additions on the buildings, not something we could put into an annual operating budget anyhow. That's a direct result of this district's philosophy over that 10-year period of time of saying, I'm going to maintain my building responsibly so that I don't find myself in that position. As I said, we are no longer able to do that. An annual operating budget cannot sustain that. So, understanding that, what we did over the summer was we took stock of our facilities, took inventory of what are the annual needs for the foreseeable future, 5 years, 7 years. What's coming due? What sections of roofs? What boilers? What windows? What was the plan that we were going to do and fund through the annual budget? Simultaneously, you will recall you authorized an energy audit. This was a BPU program where they provided the money, 75% up front, and we're also eligible for another 25% depending on what recommendations we implement. That has come back and that has been analyzed. The third thing we did was we revisited the solar proposal that was presented to the board, you may recall, in January 2008. Now, at that time, we chose not to move forward with that. The economy was in a bad way, and a referendum we didn't feel was the right thing to put before the community at that time. But we revisited that with the architectural firm that had originally done a lot of the preliminary legwork to make the preliminary assessment of where we stand. So we took that. We took those three things and we looked at what are going to be our funding alternatives to get this accomplished. This is a facilities strategic plan, if you will, so that we don't find ourselves with roofs leaking, boilers breaking down, and that type of thing. The annual budget, unfortunately, was ruled out. It really leaves us with two viable alternatives: a referendum and a combination of two other financing mechanisms, one called a power purchase agreement and the other an energy savings improvement plan, or ESIP. So we're going to take a look at those two options tonight. The course of action for this area of our budget development, the one action I'm going to ask the board to take tonight is to appoint the professionals that we need to do pre-referendum services, to do that engineering work, so that we have the information that as a community we need so that we can communicate that and have the voters make an informed decision in April. So those two alternatives, let's take a look at them. This slide reflects the eligibility of the type of project and whether it works in option one, which is the referendum, or option two, which is this combination. Let me just speak briefly about power purchase agreement energy saving improvement program. The power purchase agreement, here's how it works. If the school district can't come up with the capital to install solar on their roofs themselves, there is another mechanism to do it where we would essentially lease our roof space to a private company who would put up the capital to put the solar on there. And our benefit would be in terms of lower energy costs. We would, the way it can be designed is that our purchase of energy would be through them and it would be a lower cost, and so there is some financial benefit to us. An energy savings improvement program, this is relatively new, and I don't think it's been fully vetted yet, talking to bond counsel, the architects, but the idea is this. A referendum, as you know, here's how it works. The school district issued bonds, they get the cash, they use the cash to make the improvements, and the bonds are paid off over the life of the issue. 15 years or 20 years or whatever it turns out to be. The payment of those bonds is called debt servicing, and that's accounted for in a separate fund than what we're used to talking about. We're used to talking about the general fund. That's what the community votes on. That's where 95% of our operation happens.